Welcome to Book Crew. We are on KCCC 9:30 a.m. in New Mexico on Mondays at noon. We're available on YouTube under the Task Force Geek banner. And by the time you hear this, we'll be on every major podcast aggregator out there. I am writer and marketing Jedi Dirk Hooper, and I'm joined as always by author and editor Beth A. Freely. How are you doing, Beth?
I'm doing good, Dirk. I'm doing good. Wishing we had some rain, but other than that, I'm just kicking it.
It is
Keeping it
cats and dogs out here. I mean, it is coming down like crazy. It just started. It seems like the thunder is the lightning has kind of gone down a little bit.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it is coming down like crazy here. I like that. That's my kind of weather.
I like to read in that weather.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely a good reading day. No doubt about it.
Yes.
I'm hoping I get to do that tomorrow because it's going to rain at least for a little bit tomorrow. I'd like to do that very much.
See, you need to send it back this direction.
I don't think it works that way, Beth. Seems like the weather always comes from the same place, and it's always like from the southwest, and then it comes like across Oklahoma City. It's very unusual. Now, we had some weather not too long ago that did come from the opposite direction. I don't even know how that happened, but that is very weird.
That's usually bad too when it starts coming from the opposite direction like that.
Right, exactly. It was very unpredictable and kind of crazy. All right, well, I have an announcement to make, and my announcement is that I have been nominated for Best Erotic Writer in the ASN Lifestyle Magazine Awards.
Sweet action. You go, man. That is awesome. So
I am putting up the banner here for those of you who are watching this show. If you and I will have a link below in wherever it is that if you're listening to it. And in addition to that, I want to say that the voting it's an open forum to vote on the thing, and you can vote once a day. So I don't know how many people out there are fired up about voting once a day, but if you do, I sure would appreciate it. I'm going to be competing against other people who are going to have votes once a day. And it runs through, I believe it runs through July. So it's about 3 months from when we're recording this show. And we will be posting this hopefully pretty soon. But I will also, for the viewers at home, I will post my my image. I thought I had it in here.
Make sure you put that on our podcast group too.
I did not load it, so give me a moment, please.
Oh,
I don't know why I didn't load it. That's nuts. Ooh, now it's really coming out outside.
I can hear it. I could hear the clap of thunder. Yeah, I heard it. I can hear it raining.
I think there's a little hail involved in that. I don't like that. Hail no.
It might be. Hail no.
All right, there's my deal right there.
There it is. Look at that. You go, man. I'm so proud of you. That is awesome.
This is the ASN Awards. It started on April 13th. It runs through July 13th, and I have 7 other people that I'm running against. So it's a tight competition, and any help that you even if you just vote once, it'd be wonderful. But if you want to make it a lifestyle habit for the next month or two. That would be amazing because I will tell you that I am competing against some content creators and some models and that sort of thing that will be activating their followers to get out there, and so it's going to be a tight deal. So every vote counts on this thing, and again, you can vote every day. But that's it. I've been nominated for Best Erotic Writer, and I'm very excited about that. I would love to win that award. I do appreciate just being nominated for it, though.
Oh yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah. That is awesome.
So anyway, Beth didn't know about it. I told her I was going to surprise her.
No, this was great. That was a great surprise. I love it.
Yeah, I do need to put it. I need to put it in the Facebook group. I didn't want to do it.
Yes.
I didn't want to do it on the weekends because it's always dead, but I'll do it on Monday and stuff and get it out there. And,
yeah.
I appreciate any help that anyone will give me.
So get out there and vote for Dirk, guys.
Vote. And this time, the joke is always vote and vote often, which you can't do in legitimate, federal elections. But in this case, you can actually vote often. You can vote once a day and stuff. And I would appreciate your help. I would love to win that. It also sounds great being on a show and telling people that you've been nominated for an award. That gives me, that burnishes my resume a little bit. So that's kind of nice.
It does.
All right. Well, today, speaking of burnishing your resume, we're going to talk about developmental editing with a real live editor, which is Beth A. Freely. And so why don't we begin that by asking or answering what is developmental editing?
Okay, so developmental editing is the editing that makes all of our author friends go and cringe because it's that deep dive into your book. It's that it's where you start to look at the core of the story, not so much who your characters are, not so much your dialogue, but it's the actual core of the story. It's making sure that everything is aligned properly, making sure you don't necessarily, you don't have the glaring plot holes. Okay. You want to make sure your female characters aren't Mary Sue's and your male characters aren't Superman's. It's the look at, is it realistic? Is your dialogue realistic? Is your historical facts, if you're writing some sort of historical novel, are those correct? It gets to the meat and gristle of your book. This goes beyond proofreading. This goes beyond grammar checking. This is, story building 101 is really what developmental editing is.
It's the difference between a first draft and having a novel.
Yes. It's very much the difference between the first draft and having a novel. Developmental editing is actually that process between the first draft and your final edit checks, your final proofreading and grammar checks. It's everything in between, getting it down on paper and completely blowing it out into a full-blown novel. That's developmental editing right there, where you're, like I said, you're looking for the plot holes. You're looking for places where you can expand the story, where you can add detail. And I'm not going to say show, don't tell, because there are times when you want to show as compared to tell. Sure. And there are times you want to tell as compared to show.
Just like every rule, it's made to be broken.
Yeah.
But you have to know the rule to break it.
You have to know the rule to break it. And the developmental editing, that allows you to look at your manuscript and go, ooh, I got a data dump here. Let's fix this data dump. These are the kind of things a developmental editor will look for. Do you have a data dump? Okay, how can you break this out? How can you turn this data dump and spread it across a chapter? You have a plot hole. How do I fix this plot hole? What does this plot hole hurt further in the story? What does this plot hole hurt before, you find your plot hole? Because yes, your plot hole could affect the beginning of your story. So these are all of the things that a developmental editor will look for and will help an author work through if they are there.
It's like a 10,000 foot view of your novel. Instead of people are highly familiar with line editing, which is, just fixing grammar errors and stuff. But
Yeah.
this is looking at the whole novel and figuring out, where it needs to be improved. I know that when
Exactly.
I got done
Exactly.
with the second draft of my most recent novel, there were things that I wanted in there that, like, after looking at the book, I thought, I've got a theme going on here. I want to prop that up a little bit. I want to lean into the
Hmm.
theme a little bit more. I want to put some symbolism in it. I want to suggest some dialogue or something to prop it up
Hmm.
there. I had some characters that were totally underdeveloped. They needed to have their own voice and their own character arcs and their own little quirks. And
And this is
so,
where in the process you do all that.
yeah, the developmental editing for me was figuring that stuff out and then taking the bare bones of the original draft and trying to, shine it up a little
Hmm.
bit and try to make it,
A great
a better, a better book overall, more cohesive.
a great example for myself right now working on the samurai novel is it occurred to me last night. I'm rolling through the second draft of this book already, and I realized, I have the perfect opportunity to have, to ask the question, you know what is Bushido? What is that? Why is that important to a samurai? And coming from my female character, it makes sense. So this morning I actually sat down and looked at my manuscript and said, where can I put this conversation and where it makes sense? Where can I develop this conversation within the story, within the draft, that it makes sense and it enhances the story? This is where developmental editing on both a macro and a micro level, when an author does it, whether they do it by themselves or whether they do it with the guidance of an editor, this is where you really start to see your story take shape in ways that you didn't expect. So it's
Yeah, I mean,
an
it makes
important
all the
step.
difference in the world. And I mean,
Mhm.
honestly, if you can afford to have an editor, having someone help you through this process and
Mhm.
come at it with fresh eyes, unbiased eyes,
Yeah.
can be a great benefit to you. I realize that not everyone
Oh yeah.
can afford to have an editor and that sort of thing. But if you can, having someone there who has never read your book and doesn't have a dog in the hunt, um, is definitely worth, the price of admission there, I think.
Yeah, even if you have a friend who loves to read, if you cannot afford an editor, hand that manuscript to that friend and say, "Hey, can you read this and tell me if I'm missing anything, or can you read this and tell me if you see something wrong?" Um, because then at least you've done some due diligence towards ensuring your novel is where it needs to be before you hit that publish button. Um, and there are affordable editors out there.
For
Um,
sure.
you know what? Start if you have to, if you can't afford an editor, start with someone who likes to read and likes to edit books. You know, everybody has that friend that says, "Hey, did you catch that typo in Anne Rice's Lestat novel?"
Yeah,
There's
they all have
always
them.
one out there, and we all have that friend, and every novel has an error. I don't care how perfect you are,
Yep.
you're somewhere in your novel there's an error, a comma out of place, an apostrophe missing. Somewhere in your novel there's an error, and that's fine. We're human, and that's to be expected. um, but if you can't afford an editor, if you can't afford somebody that does developmental editing, get a friend to read your book and look for the plot holes, because sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah, because they're going to catch stuff. Look, it's very easy to be blind while you're writing this stuff, and
Yep.
the character arcs, and the setting, and what's going on. it's very easy for you to skip over something that's very important
Oh yeah.
that wasn't,
Yes.
that isn't properly explained. And someone who's reading it for the first time might go, hey, I don't think I don't think you covered this properly. In my first novel, I remember I had a friend who read the story and said that they wanted on a particular scene, they said, I wish that these characters talked longer about this subject. And it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. But when I looked at it, yeah, when I looked at it, it's like, they're absolutely right. This should be a much more in-depth conversation, because it really defines the two characters and their relationship. And I know the characters and I know their relationship, but someone who's reading it for the first time may not know the stuff that's in the cracks.
Right. Right.
And so it was.
Is that important to the overall story? Maybe not. But is it flavor for the story? Well, yeah. I'm working with a gal right now who has been questioning leaving a scene in her book. And I told her, I said, leave it be for now. I said, let me read the book. Let me edit it for you. Let me see if you want to leave this scene in, if it's important enough to leave in. And after reading, when I edit a book, I always read the book first. And then I go back and I do the developmental editing. And then I do the line editing and the grammar before I send it back to my author. I put a book through about 4 different stages when I edit for someone. And after reading the book, I told her, I said, don't take the scene out. I said, this scene gives the book color. I said, but it also gives your main character some interesting backstory that you have subconsciously used further in the book. Now, she's planning on turning this book into a screenplay. I said, all right. I said, if you turn this into a screenplay, I said, and you have to take this scene out, all you need to do is you can take the scene out, but in order to keep the flavor, have your main character say something about these two over here, so that the audience understands that these two guys over here influenced her enough for her to do something further down the line in the story. You keep that connection without losing the flavor that these characters built. When you're developmental editing, these are the kind of things you need to look for. Does this relationship make sense? Do I need to explain who these people are in conjunction with my main characters? If they don't make sense, get rid of them. If they're not needed for the story, and you're going through and you realize, these guys are kind of extraneous, don't be afraid to chop it up. This is the point in your writing where you can say, I'm killing off this character here. I'm getting this character here, out of Dodge. And these two characters in the school scene, I don't need that at all. And get rid of it. This is where you do it. This is what the developmental editing is for.
Yeah. How do you prepare for developmental editing?
Obviously, write the story. That's the start.
Right.
Get the story down. The best way to prepare for it is, once you have that first draft done, walk away. Walk away for a day or 2 days. Walk away for a week. Walk away for a month. Every author is different. But walk away from it. Like you brought up, your characters, they're part of you. They're part of your mind. They're part of your soul. Okay? You know them intimately. You know them too intimately.
Right.
And sometimes you need to take a break from them.
Yeah.
You know where every freckle is on his butt. Okay. I mean, sometimes you just got to walk away. You don't have to walk away for long. You just have to give yourself that mental break so that when you come back, you're looking at the story with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
Get feedback. Again, you can get feedback from ARC readers. You can get feedback from beta readers. You can get feedback from your mother. Have someone read the story and give you some feedback. Right now, with the samurai story I'm writing, I've got 2 people that are currently reading it as I finish chapters. I'm sending it to them, and they're reading it, they're enjoying it. They haven't found anything yet that I haven't, that I've botched up either historically or plot hole wise. And I know these 2 people well enough to know that they will tell me, hey, you're missing something, or hey, that's not the right term for that piece of clothing. Have someone read it. You don't have to have 20 different ARC readers or beta readers. One will do, preferably one who maybe is not familiar with your writing or is familiar enough with your writing to know, they've read your stuff before. They know what your voice sounds like. They know what you're trying to do with your stories. Usually one of the first people I send my books to is my best friend, Miriam, in Arizona. I'll send it to her and she'll come back and she will have bled on that with little things that, sometimes, oh, you should have seen the original. You should have seen the originals for Dorian, the way she bled on those. But if she hadn't done that, that book would not have been, that book would not have turned out the way it did. Have someone else read it. From there, once you pass it off to a friend, go ahead.
Tell someone if you are going to have someone read your book, tell them that it's okay that they be critical or picky, or that you want to hear. I mean, look, if they enjoy the book, obviously you want to hear that too. But, if they've got an issue with something, you don't have to use it, but it's valuable to you to hear something negative, because if they're having a problem with it, then, other readers will have that problem as well.
Will. Yeah.
So, and try not to take it personally, like we usually do.
Yeah, it's hard to take it personally, but as an editor, the very first thing I tell all of my authors is, I am not going to change the core of your story. I've had it done to me. There is no reason for it. This is your story. This is your vision. This is your voice. My job is to help you make it better. I am never going to tell one of my authors, no, you can't have two love stories going in one book. I am never going to tell my authors, you have to lessen this character. I've had it happen to me by an editor, and I dug my heels in for 9 years before that book ever came out, which, in case anybody's wondering, I'm talking about The Legend of Captain St. Pierre. Miriam and I co-wrote that book together. I had an editor say, no, you have to diminish one of the sisters' roles, and she can't have a love story in the same book. And I said to her, why? Well, because it doesn't fit in the romance formula. That's what I was told. It doesn't fit in the romance formula. Well, diminishing the role of one sister, honey, ruins the entire book, especially when you're talking about twins.
Right.
9 years. I dug my heels in 9 years. And when Miriam and I talked about going indie way back in 2015, it was the president of the company that came back and said, let me read the book. And basically told me, this editor, she was wrong. And I vowed that day that if I'm working with an author as an editor, I will never ask them to change their book to fit some sort of formula. I will sit here and I will micro and macro edit your book for you. I will sit here and tell you where you've got a plot hole, and I will give you suggestions how to fix it. But ultimately, that book is the author's vision, the author's voice, and they can take all the beta and ARC reader advice they want, or they can have as many people read it and turn around and go, I don't agree with any of this, and just ignore it all. I invite my authors to ignore any suggestion I make because it's theirs. That's where getting feedback's important. Whether the feedback's coming from your editor or from a friend or your mom, get some sort of feedback. Even if all the feedback you get is, when is this book coming out? I need it now. Because then you know you're onto something. Yeah. The next step, and this sounds so counterintuitive, but it actually works, is to turn around. You have a full manuscript in front of you. Write an outline. Outline your manuscript. Because if you can outline your manuscript from start to finish before it even gets to an editor, you can see where you're missing something, or you can see if you have a plot hole, or you'll be able to see right away that character A and character B don't mesh, and character A really needs to be with character E. Outlining your novel after you write it really highlights things that are missing or things that are problematic. And if you're a pantster, this is really a great way to make sure you've got all your ducks in a row.
I think this is a really great advice. And I think that a lot of people don't even think about outlining the thing afterward. But outlining even if you have an outline beforehand and then you write the thing, it's probably going to vary. I've never written anything that hasn't been different, if not radically different, when I finally got the thing finished. And if you're the type of person, and most writers are not like this, but if you're the type of person that can do like a spreadsheet or something and can put like the characters along the top and then the chapters and then show the progression of their character arcs and, what's happening with different pieces of the plot, it can be very obvious if someone is underdeveloped. If you have it all laid out in front of you, it's very easy to catch something. It's like, wait a minute, this character went from A to Z, but there's nothing in between, in the book. So I need to fill some of those things in, to make the character development stronger.
One of my favorite ways of actually, when I'm able to actually sit down and do this, one of my favorite ways of doing it is taking a bunch of index cards and actually writing out the outline on index cards and then taping them to a whiteboard.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a long enough whiteboard or a big enough whiteboard, you can actually, you can see it and visualize it. And one, that does show where you have some holes. And two, those cards, if you're taped or if you're using, you can use sticky notes. You can get index cards with sticky on them. You can pull that card right off and you can move it. If you realize that this point here needs to go in chapter 5, the point from chapter 1 needs to go into chapter 5. This is all part of the developmental editing process. And there's nothing that says you have to follow the outline that you built before you wrote the story and stick to it all the way through.
Oh,
we all know that.
Definitely not.
We know that.
Yeah, definitely
not. I have changed scenes in, Love of a Samurai so many times, right? I've changed one scene like 5 times already until I was finally happy with it. And I moved things from that scene to another one. This is part of the developmental editing process. Outline your manuscript after you write it. Take a look at it. And the other thing I suggest is while you're outlining it, okay, if you are an auditory type of person, put your manuscript in Word and listen to it as you outline it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's another great way of catching something. Yeah, Word will read to you. And it's a great way to catch things. As you could be sitting there listening to it and go, wait a minute, I thought I wrote that scene and it should, I thought I wrote that paragraph and it should be right here. Yeah. Because we can read and read and read and read and read, and our eyes will fill in things. Yep. And as a writer, we may think that we wrote something and we actually didn't. It's one of those things like, did I really do that? Was it a fever dream? So listen to it while you're outlining it, because that will actually give you can hear your story. You can hear how it flows by listening to it, just using Word, and then outline it at the same time and see where you're missing things.
Yeah. It's excellent advice.
And then, once you do that, the fourth thing that I want you to do as an author is you've got your outline. Look at it. Look at your outline. Look at your manuscript. You've listened to it. Now, what are your goals with the book? Are you happy with how the book finished? Are you happy with the relationship in the book? Are you happy with the murder mystery? If once you outline it and you have that visual reference, and now you have an auditory reference if you listen to it as well, you are able to outline exactly what you want to do with this book. Is the book going in the right direction? Is the book long enough?
How about your tone? Do you have a consistent tone
right?
through the book?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a lot of comedy? Is it dark? What is the or is it consistent throughout the entire book?
If your goal was to write a dark romance, and after you have gotten feedback and you've outlined it and you've listened to it, you realize you wrote a rom-com,
right?
You might need to rethink your goals.
Lean into it
a little bit. Yeah, lean into it.
It may not come out the way you expect.
They never do. Yeah, don't expect to ever come out the way you originally planned it, because it's never going to happen. Never. I have 11 books under my belt. I am working on 12 and 13 right now. And I can tell you, neither one of them are coming out where I initially planned them to come out. It's not going to happen. Because as we build our stories, even if we're building a story from an outline, as we build our stories, they move and they flow and they change. And that's why when you're in that developmental editing phase, that second outline after you finish the initial manuscript, you make that second outline, you can take that and compare it with your first outline and see where your story has morphed, and then be able to identify the goals and what you were hoping to really accomplish with the book. If you're lucky, you're on target.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, you've gone completely different direction. And I say lucky because sometimes that's how we learn that, oh my God, I can actually write a rom-com, or, oh my God, I can actually write a dark romance.
Sure. It can be a pleasant surprise.
It can be a very pleasant surprise. A very pleasant
But you might have to adjust some stuff.
Yes.
So that it works with, the new thing that you have.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And then, of course, brace yourself. As we like to say, gird your loins for that formal feedback you're going to get from an editor. Okay. Yeah. Because once you've done developmental editing can go in two sections. There's the first section that you as the author do. You do your developmental editing first. You prepare the book for an editor to take and say, okay, what do we need to do here? If you've done your job right as the author, and you've developmentally edited your own book, and you've done your second draft, third draft, 100th draft, whatever, and you send it to your editor, if you've done it right, your editor does not have a lot to do.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no reason why any author, traditionally published, indie published, doesn't matter. There's absolutely no reason why you can't go and do your own developmental editing. It is possible. Plus, if you cannot afford an editor and you go through these steps and you look at your book and you do the developmental editing yourself and you re-edit your book and you have one more person read it and they don't find anything glaring in it, again, you've done it right and you should feel comfortable enough to release that book.
Yeah.
So it's not as scary as it sounds. And a lot of people are scared to have an editor look at their book. A lot of people are scared to, go back in through their own book or let other people read it. You can go into the developmental editing phase of your book with a checklist of things you want to look for. That's something I highly recommend.
That's a great idea.
At the bare minimum, make sure your
Cover the
plot is
bases.
engaging and well-paced. Yeah, make sure the plot's engaging and well-paced. Make sure you don't have any plot holes or inconsistencies. Make sure your characters have clear motivations and goals. Make sure your relationships are believable. Make sure your setting is immersive, and make sure your dialogue is natural. If you do nothing more than look for those items in your book and do it, through the lens of a developmental editor, even if you are your own developmental editor, if you just take those bare minimums right there, you will be in a better place with your book than when you started.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Beth, we're getting close to the end of this thing. These things go so doggone quick.
They do.
I want to say a few things for people who are listening to this, and realize that even if you've been doing this for a while, it may be very difficult for you to do your own developmental editing. And some people may feel uncomfortable, like they don't really know, what to look for, or they may feel like they're too close to it or something. Beth does developmental editing, and she's got a master's degree in English, and she has many years of experience as both a traditional and published author. So she's been on both ends of this. She's had editors tell her stupid stuff and good stuff. And, she's also helped a lot of people over the years. So if you are in a position and you have the luxury of having the resources where you can afford a developmental editor, then, perhaps you can consider going to Beth and asking her to take a look at your book. Beth, where should they go to do that?
They can find me, Facebook, reach out with a Facebook message. Just let me know, hey, I heard your podcast. I would like to talk to you about developmental editing. And even if you don't hire me, even if you just have a question or you want to know more about it, reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Instagram at BA Freely. I am on Threads and Blue Sky at BA Freely, I believe. But you can also reach me via both of my websites, BethAnne, ANNE, Freely, FREELY.com. There's a place there that you can contact me. You can also reach me through themusesfunhouse.com. And I do try to keep my prices affordable. And if you really want to use me as your editor, but you are concerned about cost, come talk to me. I will work with you. I will keep it in your budget, and we will get your book the way you want it so that you release a book that everybody wants to read.
I'm not an expert on this, but I have looked at some editing, prices, and Beth is very reasonable, particularly for what you get.
Because I do it all. I do everything. I do from soup to bolts, soup to nuts to bolts, as they say it.
Yeah, she's going to turn it over. And you're going to be working with Beth, and Beth is awesome. So that's one of the great benefits of, not only are you getting, the intellect and the experience, but Beth is just a really cool person. And I think that's, having someone talk about your book can be very difficult, but I promise you that talking to Beth is going to be a pleasant experience for you.
Thank you, Dirk. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. All right. Well, we're just about done with our deal. I'm going to say that what I'm going to do is say vote for me. That's what I'm going to talk about.
Yes, go and vote for Dirk.
Please get over there and vote at the ASN Lifestyle Magazine Awards.com. That's going to run through July 13th. I'd appreciate your vote. And I guess that's it. Let's wrap it up.
That's it. That's all we got.
All right. That's all we got. What else do you need? For Beth A. Freely, I'm Dirk Cooper saying until next time, dream hard.